was a very short break. We're almost through with our um, second day session for the training. I would like to introduce Pastor Rhonda Holbert, who will be taking us through motivational interviewing.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Do I have feedback? Am I
No,
okay?
we can hear you loud and clear.
That's not good either. All right, well, let me share my screen. I think, um, okay, you cannot share. Let's see. Let's try that again. All right. And I believe I may have a technical challenge over here in that when I share the PowerPoint, I think I go away. Um, oh no, I can still see. Okay, very good. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be with you today. I'm going to be sharing about motivational interviewing in the church. And what's interesting about this technique that we're going to talk about today is you probably do it and didn't know what to call it. So let us go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me. I am the founder of Celebrate Life Cancer Ministry. I host a new internet television show called Celebrate Life Today with Pastor Rhonda. Um, I am a patient navigator and advocate, a health educator, an entrepreneurship director for both the youth and the adults with the Los Angeles Urban League, and I am a 20-year cancer survivor. So I bring to you the knowledge that I was asked to talk about today, which is motivational interview in the church. So let's get started with a poll the audience. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to see hands or not because I can't see the chat box, but we'll maybe somebody can help me out. Maybe
I'll
Eric
help
can.
you out. Don't worry.
Okay. So the first question is, how many of you, and type in the chat box, I'd like to see the chat box roll. How many of you have had a counseling class? I want to see the chat box roll. Oh, there's a chat box up there. Okay, one person has answered.
One person has a thumbs up.
Okay, all right, good.
Okay.
No one else?
Yeah, 4 people so far. 5, 6.
Starting to roll. Okay, come on.
One person said no.
No, okay.
Okay. 7, 8. 8 yeses so far.
Okay,
3
well that's a good.
no's. So I think 8 yeses, the 4 no's. 4 no's so far.
Okay, awesome. But for those who have actually had a class, what was the main focus of the training? How about you identify the problem, and then you provide a solution? Can you agree with that? That's kind of sort of what they kind of taught us to do, right? Well, motivational interviewing is a little bit different from that. So there's a layperson's definition. It's like, what's it for? Why do you need motivational interviewing? It's a collaborative conversation to strengthen a person's own motivation for and a commitment to change. A pragmatic practitioner's definition would be, why would I use it? And motivational interviewing is a person-centered counseling method for addressing the common problems of ambivalence about change. And then a technical therapeutic definition is, how does it work? Motivational interviewing is a collaborative, goal-oriented method of communication with particular attention to language of change. It is designed to strengthen an individual's motivation for and the movement towards a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own arguments for change. The bottom line is it provides a way of working with patients who may not seem ready to make a behavioral change that are considered necessary by their healthcare practitioner. So think about it. Has your doctor recommended that you make any change in your lifestyle in the past? Anybody? Can you put that in the chat box? Yes, yes. Is something happening in the chat box? Sharon is shaking her
people
head.
I'm shaking my head. Yes to both ends.
Oh, and for many of us, we ask ourselves the question, it seems so simple. Why can't I do this? Okay, so let's talk about it. So what is motivational interviewing? First of all, it is an evidence-based approach to behavioral change. Evidence-based. It's a counseling method that involves enhancing the patient's motivation to change. So the why, what motivates you to make a change? When you think about things that you've changed in your life, what motivated you to get there? Sometimes we have to, spend a little time. Some people it was instant, and some people it took us some time. I can equate it to someone who is smoking. So a person that has been smoking for 20 years, for them to just wake up and have the desire to do it today, it may not happen today, but they could definitely be well on their way. But then other cases, the same smoking person could wake up today and voila, decided no more, and they literally could stop smoking today. But again, it all has to do with the motivation. And it's a motivation that comes from the inside out, not imposing it from the outside in. Okay. So the inside out means I would have pretty much thought of it, or I was something I did to make it happen. And from the outside in would be my doctor, my wife, my husband, my coworkers, whoever it is asking me or encouraging me or, trying to get me to make this change. And maybe I'm not ready. So motivational interviewing is when the more I looked at it, it is a biblical principle. The Bible says, seek first to understand rather than to be understood. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and in all your getting, get an understanding. Okay. So one of the first principles of motivational interviewing is collaboration. It's creating a safe environment that enables the individual to reveal their struggles, activate their strengths, and make decisions for positive change. So the counselor, which would be you in many cases, the counselor has to develop an environment or allow the client, the member, the parishioner to become comfortable enough that you get them to talk. Set an environment that gets them comfortable to talk. Because the ultimate goal is you want to see change. You don't want them necessarily to agree with you and to do what you say do, but you wanted them to do it because they find it important to make that change on their own. Okay. The second is acceptance. It's demonstrating an understanding of an individual's perspective of their own situation, even when it conflicts with ours. That's a big one, because in many cases, if you as the counselor do not agree with or don't like or you have a negative perspective on whatever that thing is that they're trying to change, it could shut you down but you need to remain neutral. You don't have to like it to be able to help them through their challenge. Okay, so again, it's demonstrating an understanding of the individual's perspective of their own situation, even when it conflicts with your own views. And that's a big one for a lot of us, because we're accustomed to a different method of counseling, of supporting another person, and is really trying to get them to understand where we are so that we can get them to change. But that's not what this method is about. This method is getting them to make the change on their own. So we have to do some of the understanding to get them to move along their journey. The next principle is compassion. Is serving as a supportive and committed partner for change. The fact that you understand their pain. You don't have to completely have experienced it in the past, but the fact that you understand, and it's really, since we're talking to the church, the faith-based community, it's really a spirit of discernment. Right? Because we have to listen to be able to hear, so that we can be supportive and committed. Committed to what? Committed to them making a change that will be a positive reflection on what they want to do for their life. Amen. And then evocation is recognize and demonstrate that the person needs to make their own decision on what, how, and when to change. And let's see if I can move this. And you don't change the person. They have to make the change. Okay, I've got too much stuff showing on my screen. All right, so the question now is, well, how do I make this happen? Where do I begin? Well, in the beginning of the process, you must use open-ended questions. Anything that's going to take you to a yes or a no, that means that the client or the parishioner, the person that you are working with, they could easily just shut down. You say, well, how do you say, did you feel sad about that? Yes. Now you got to go find another question. So you don't want yes or no questions. You want things that cause them to elaborate, things that will cause them to have a conversation. Remember, you're building a relationship with them, a professional relationship that allows them to talk, allows them to share. And the longer they talk, the more insight you gain. Okay, so the kinds of questions that will help us reach this goal are, what difficulties have you had in relationship to COVID-19? And I often, I've asked several people that over the last year, and they're like, well, I really haven't had any. And I wait. Let them think about whether they did or not. That's why I use that little question mark guy. It's like, let me see. And I would have used a Winnie the Pooh character, because he's always thinking. Give them time to think if they didn't have an answer, because maybe you're the first person that actually asked them that question. Another one might be, how might your health stop you from doing what you want to do? So if you really wanted to go in the yard and play with the children, but you're overweight, and when you start to walk upstairs, you get out of breath, or if you go too many steps, if you're trying to catch a ball, by the time you catch the first one, you're ready to sit down and take a break. Okay, so you're getting them to you're asking those kind of questions that get them to think about, how will your health stop you from doing what you want to do, not what I want you to do. So you're getting them to think about their own situation. And in what ways do you think other people might be affected? So in that same scenario, that child that they want to go play with, the child might have gotten all excited. And then all of a sudden, mom, dad, they can't play anymore. So why did they come out here in the first place? So my decision not to take care of my health has now not only affected me, but has affected someone else. And then another question might be, what do you think will happen if you don't make that change? So that could bring you back to, well, if I don't make the change about losing weight, then I could have a heart attack. I could have a stroke. You know, there's so many things that, this weight is a bit much. I could have a reoccurrence of cancer. So that's what you want them to do. You want to bring that person to a point where they're thinking about their own stuff and how their stuff affects their own health, affects other people, and what will happen if nothing changes. Because the reality is, some people will choose not to change. But at least they would have chosen that decision after having a conversation about changing. Some other questions that we could ask when you see that they're ready to make a change. First of all, you want to remember that you don't want to tell them what to do. You want to ask them. Ask questions, okay? So questions would be, what does this mean in regards to your health? Okay. So you're asking questions when you see that they're ready to do something about it. What does this mean in regard to your health? It must be uncomfortable for you now seeing all of this. What's the next step? Again, you're getting them to think about it. What do you think has to change? Basically, what has to change? And then we need to set a goal to make sure that can happen. It sounds like things cannot stay the way that they are. What are you going to do? But again, you got all of this out of them. So they're having a conversation with you and you're like, wow, they actually admitted that they didn't want to go on any longer in that state. You know, whether it could be a pre-diabetic state. You know, well, what would happen if things don't change? Well, what will happen if you cannot stay the way they are? Everything is what is going to happen. What will you see? And then another one, of the things that we have mentioned here, which one is the most important reason for change? They don't have to start with a list of 10, but start with one thing at a time. Because whatever the situation is, in many cases, it has taken years to acquire that state or to be in that situation, and you want them to be successful in their change. And so you may need to ask them, which one is most important and which one will we begin with? So I found this little chart that just to me was crystal clear about motivational interviewing. And it might help us to make it a little bit easier to remember the rules. The rule is to resist telling them what to do. And some of us just have that that situation in our life where if we're not telling people what to do, because if I tell them, then I can move on, right? But you want to avoid telling them. You want to avoid directing them or convincing your friend about the right path to a good health. The number 2, the U, understand their motivation. Seek to understand their values, their needs, their abilities, their motivation, and their potential barriers to changing their behavior. then listen with empathy. Listen with empathy. Listen with empathy. Listen, 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 listen. Because when we listen, we seek to understand their values, their needs, their ability, their motivation, and their potential of barriers. Because you'll hear them say things that they didn't hear them say themselves. You know, they'll say things like, you know, I know that being overweight is really not healthy for me. And then they say, yeah, but, and they'll go on to say something else. Okay. But you need to remember that's what they said. And when it's your time to talk, you can go back to that statement and remind them. So again, you're saying that you know it really is not healthy for you to be at the weight that you are. Did I understand you to say that? And they were like, yeah, I said that. Again, it wasn't your words, it was theirs. You're giving them back their words. And then you want to empower them. Work with them to set achievable goals and to identify techniques to overcome barriers. That's what we want to do. We want to empower them. We want to keep from telling them. We want to understand where they are. We want to listen, 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 and then empower them to do that which they already said they want to do. And this whole concept of motivational interviewing was developed by a man named William Miller. And I encourage you to go and spend some time reading or even watching YouTube. There's a YouTube link there of some things that they actually developed and roll out the concept of motivational interviewing. Is very, very intriguing. And I thank you for your time. And there's my contact information. And I am now open for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Rhonda. Thank you so much. I know I didn't get to introduce, my apologies, but I just want to say I am very grateful to be able to work with Pastor Rhonda for all these years. She is a champion and just been a phenomenal leader for our community, especially in cancer survivorship and caregiving. And, you know, being able to dedicate or serve in those type of areas can be challenging, but she does it with so much ease, so much grace and leadership that I always say I want to be just like her. You know, I'm grown up, but can I grow up a little more and just be like her? So she is just phenomenal. And we're so happy to have her present. You know, we talked about motivational interviewing. She was like, people are doing this now. We just need to frame it in that way. So I'm so grateful that she was able to lend her expertise on the things she does as an expert and be able to help us in terms of how we can perform this counseling as we go about this project. So at this time, I will open it up for questions, comments for Pastor Rhonda. I know people have been saying awesome and amazing, and I guess I have a question, Pastor Rhonda. You already alluded to some of the questions that will be asked for COVID-19, but what specific questions are, I know you've given a list of strategies, but what do you think pinpointing for individuals who have been impacted by COVID-19? What gems of wisdom can you give us with motivational interviewing, but also for individuals who are managing multiple chronic illnesses in addition with COVID-19? What would be some of the gems of wisdom you would take for us in terms of being these leaders of change?
So one of the things I realized in talking to the people that I've had the chance to talk to during this season is a lot of people are actually putting off or have put off going to the doctor, period. And so just to be able to find out how they're feeling, like, and let them answer the real deal. You know, because, you know, we're real quick. It's like, how you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. And go on to the next. No, 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 no. No, how you really feeling? How are you really doing? To be able to slow down. I remember the point that I drove home. Anybody know what point I drove home? Anybody? Listen, 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 listen. So that's the point. We have to learn to listen. Um, when you pause, when you ask them how they're feeling, and when they try to go on to something else, get them to come back to, but how are you feeling? Because the reality is most of us don't believe other people really care. And part of this method, the principles of this method is building an environment where people feel comfortable telling you. But as ministers, as people of faith, we know that if you don't have the time right then, don't ask that question right then. But let's be real. It's important that, you know, if they begin to say, because when they begin to talk about, um, when you say that you want to pay attention, you want to hear, you really want to know, you care, they really might dump something on you. And it might not be a 5-minute conversation. It could be 15, 30, an hour. I actually talked to a woman for 2 hours about a month ago, just behind how are you really feeling? But we need to listen to them, build an environment, get them to talk about what's going on, listen for the things that they say, that they admit, you know, or if you really want more, ask them, so how did you respond to that? How did that make you feel? And do you think you could feel any better? Do you think you could feel any different? So, and then listen and understand. And when things come out of left field, be able to just don't put your feelings into it, but understand that these people these is a reality for that person, and that you want to help them get to the next place. And I did mention that if they start with a long conversation, one of the things that's really, really important is that you say, you know what, I didn't realize that you were going through so much, and I really want to pay attention and give you the time that you deserve. Can we possibly do this at 7 o'clock this evening? Is it possible that we could talk first thing in the morning at a time where both of you can spend time talking about it? But because so many people have not kept up with their medical concerns, you know, throughout COVID, you know, listen for ways that people might talk about, well, I didn't have internet connection. Well, I don't have, you know, I don't want to go into the hospital because a lot of people are still have COVID in the hospital, and that might not be the best place for me because, you know, after all, I have all these conditions. But we really want them to come to the place. I mean, even with the vaccine, I had a conversation just yesterday about somebody who their position was that they're not getting the vaccine because of past history. And I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. I said, but what else do you know about the history of research? And they were like, well, I really don't know a lot more than that. So I was able to educate them and, you know, to really, and then actually say, so, you know, do you feel any different now that you have a little more information? You know, so how could that make an impact? And that person actually say, you know, now I really want to go get that vaccine, because they were the parts that were having them stagnant on making a decision were pieces of information they just didn't have at that time. Okay, so.
I know there's a hand raised. Thank you, Pastor Rhonda. That was an excellent response. And congratulations on decreasing some vaccine hesitancy. That's a beautiful thing. I think there's two. Mr. Lathan, I see your hand raised.
Okay, I just want to say a wonderful presentation, and when you asked the question, what was it that you hit home? I had to answer, but I was exercising something that you stated in your presentation, that when you ask the question, that you give the person that you're talking to a time to answer your question, you know? And so I was just thinking about the many things that you had spoken about, and that is very true. And I learned that. Now, also, I just want to state it, and when you asked the question about who had taken counseling, I haven't went per se to a class or a school for counseling, but in my evangelism classes, we had sessions talking about how you deal with people, how you talk to them, how you minister to them. And one of the things that they taught us is that you had to listen. You couldn't get in their story. You couldn't take over the conversation. We are there to listen so that people can share with us what they're going through. And a lot of time a person would tell you what they're going through without telling you what they're going through. But if you're not listening, you will miss it. And so I enjoyed all that you have had to say. I have enjoyed these 2 days greatly. And I just, someone mentioned earlier, I just want more, you know? And so I thank each and every one of you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lathan. I appreciate that. That was a beautiful testimony right there. Thank you. That's true. We all need to listen. I agree with you. You can find somebody's story. And somebody also put in the chat, managerial leadership and staff performance class. That's another one. You know, we may not take a direct counseling, but there's all these aspects. Really quick, because I know we're running into time, but somebody did say, and maybe you could drop some gems of wisdom about this. What if some of these individuals are your family members? And you started cracking up, but it's true. How do you manage with that?
Run quick, leave Jerusalem immediately. But we have to have the same, our family are our constituents as well. When we talk about customer service, the customer is not only the one buying, but the customer is also your coworker. The customer is also your boss. So everybody deserves customer service. Everyone deserves the same respect. So I don't know so much that I would make the determination the family member, but more of the desire of the person to want to make a change. And a lot of times we will argue with people, and people are like, well, I need to go and just get them told. My question is always, but what's your goal? As a counselor, what is your goal? My goal is to get change, not for them to agree with me, but for them to have change, because it's clear that whatever state they're in, they're not happy. So if I can create an environment for that family member to talk to me, to have enough respect between the two of us, even if we have to lay down all the other issues that we have in having just being in family, put all that aside so that we can get change, whether the change is accepting Christ, whether the change is losing weight, whether the change is doing a clinical trial or not doing a clinical trial. Whatever that change is, whether it's, from happy to sad, from sad to happy, that's the way it should go, from sad to happy. But put it down, build an environment of respect where they will be able to pour their heart out. You put aside the fact that you don't like those 100 things that they do. and help them get to a place of change that becomes a positive situation for them.